Hello.
Good afternoon.
Howdy.
Hey y'all. I'm trying to get my earbuds to Ed. Come on, sorry. Hey Greg.
Hey, Kenyatta.
He might be dead.
Are you hopping over to the HCR meeting?
Yeah, in a little bit.
I am
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
gonna
we got.
see real quick.
Yeah, I kind of told Gay that we was gonna have to go to that because we got the thing on Wednesday, so we've got to be there. Hello, how are you, Mr. Harmer?
Hi, Kenyatta. How are you doing?
The way I had this set up, I couldn't see who I was in here already.
Oh, hey, Kenyatta, how'd the BSK election go?
Oh my gosh, I lost by 5 votes. Five.
Five. Who
What
won?
a cheat. I mean, you know what I mean. I mean, it's not
Grounds,
that close.
is there grounds for appeal on that? She went away.
We have lost her.
Here she comes. Back, I think. Oh,
Can't
her,
hear you.
her audio's still muted.
Sorry, I got my earbuds to work, so it finally clicked into my ears and then it disconnected because when I twisted them in my ear. Sorry. Yeah, 5 votes. So
Is there grounds for appeal on that? Because it wasn't a clear majority or?
I mean, I don't know.
What about
Where would
a
I check that? A recount? Oh no, I asked for a recount. I did ask for a recount, but they was like, you can't. There's no such thing as a recount with an electronic vote because it's electronically tallied. But they were supposed to see if they could retabulate or something. I don't know. It just seems like they're just gonna be like, nope, 5 votes, you lost.
I would have taken my vote. I probably voted for both of you. You know how you can vote for multiple members, and I
No.
known it was coming down.
That was another thing they did.
For BSK, you can only vote for one, right? There was only one seat.
Maybe
There
I'm
was an NEA and a KEA election going on at the same time, which
Yeah.
also confused people because they didn't mention BSK at all. They talked
Yeah.
about
Hey,
the
Mom.
NEA and the KEA election, but they didn't mention BSK. And some people couldn't get to it. And if you were trying to vote on a phone, you couldn't. You could only do it by a computer, but they didn't say that because of course they didn't.
I mean, it just kind of sucks to know that I was that close. 5 votes. I know 5 people that couldn't get in to vote. And so
I know,
just
but
to know
some
that
people couldn't get in either. They were at, I have some colleagues, God help them, who actually go to school. So, who don't go to school rather, and couldn't get on their computer. They work from school. So when, I told them they were home, they didn't have their computer. They're trying to do this from their phone. And, so there's no telling how many people did not vote at all because they couldn't get to a computer.
exactly.
There's no telling. But my money's on.
I mean, so what did you say? What do you mean by it since it's not a majority vote? What's that mean?
And if you think I'm the expert
I
on
can't
all,
hear you. Hold on. Oh gosh, hold on, Gregory. Sorry. What did you say?
I am not the expert on internal like management things, but does the vote call for, so it's the person that gets the most votes? Is that the way it's phrased? Or I was thinking there's a majority vote, and if there's no clear majority by the winner, then that could be grounds for, another runoff election.
That's
I heard it was the
definitely worth
majority.
looking into.
Who said that they heard it's a majority?
This is Latasha.
Hey.
Hey,
Hey,
Latasha.
How are you?
Hey, and I
I'm
see,
good.
I want to
Jane.
change the way that this is viewed. I want to see everybody. How do I see everybody?
I think that's on your screen. You have gallery view or grid view or something.
Isn't
Hey, Miss
grid and
Renee,
gallery
how
the
you
same?
Sorry.
Evening, everyone, or good afternoon.
So I think we
Oh,
need to
yes.
get started since most of everybody here is going to be jumping off at 4:30.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows everybody. So is it okay if we skip introductions? Just I'll do a minute summary with the roll call at the end, so we have a list of everybody who is here. Greg asked to talk about SROs in schools, and I put this little A, R, and N in front because I wanted to kind of resonate how this ties into the work we've been doing with the EARN, the vote. Police in schools really covers 3 of those 4 areas. A is an anti-racist budget. We want them prioritizing our spending in an anti-racist sort of way. So shifting from policing to other things. R, the resolution to support the movement would relate to that, which is a different topic altogether. And then N, no in-person return to school until it's safe. Safe means from policing. All kids need to feel safe when we do return to in-person school. So Greg, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can maybe spend 5 or 10 minutes. Well, let's make it 5.5 to 6 minutes. And then if we have some questions for you, we'll go from there. Is that all right?
Sure, and I'm more of an open conversation type of person, but I feel like we've got a scenario within JCPS that's not going to go away. We have a movement on the ground in the streets that is poised to bring some momentum to where I feel we need to be pushing. For those that aren't familiar with the backdrop, and I guess everybody is. I mean, we've seen. I was part of a campaign that worked for years to get them to end the contracts with local police and celebrated when they did. Then we saw what appears to be a minority on the board looking and a party directed measure. Well, maybe, and it was the combination of the Marshall shooting and how state legislators see a need to react around schools by at the state level passing a bill that requires armed uniform guards in every school building when funds become available. And it can't happen without a fight. And we've got to figure out a way to roll in what we've got going in Justice Square to building support. I think it boils down to building more support for teachers, from teachers. And that's something HCR is looking at. We're designing some community events to further that discussion. And I think it rolls into what we're planning on Wednesday, which is a restorative circle for teachers to kind of get them to have a feel of what restorative circles do and how that can be an alternative to a punitive discipline system. But I feel like we've got a lot of groups working in different directions, and I'd like us to be more cohesive in our strategy moving forward. And I don't know if we have everybody at the table at this meeting that we need to have that conversation, but I definitely would like the Alliance to be initiating it if possible.
Definitely. So do you see this as potentially maybe a motion or a resolution that comes out of the committee we take back to the board to say we need to now focus in a more intentional way on this piece of the pie as we head into 2021? Maybe that's something we can be thinking about between now and our next meeting.
I think so, and maybe talk to Corey Scholl and see how he would recommend we approach the board with this, because I think we've got several people on the board that are empathetic to that situation and would share our position on that. So how do we best bring that to the board and get enough teachers on board with the idea to be successful? Those are the conversations I feel like we need to be having.
Greg, may I ask a question?
Would you
Do
please?
Do you get the sense, and I'm not saying this is true or not, you're the expert really,
Jeez.
that that people are pushing off the police thing because most people don't think we'll be back this school year. I mean, I don't.
I think that's been, certainly I've gotten that feel from, let's not bring it up because we think it's going to go away as an immediate concern.
It's a problem for next August.
That's where I see some people try to put it in. But if we don't watch out, I've seen how quickly the things work. I mean, we were moving toward an internal security force that JCPS controls, and I was on board with that until the point they went from no police uniforms to
Guns.
yeah. Do we need them to carry 2 or 3 clips? I mean, that's literally how one planning session to the next went. I mean, it is. So if we're not diligent, we're going to have those police in schools with weapons this year.
I just wanted to ask because I could easily see that happening where, oh, you know, I'm with you, but we don't have to worry about it for months. And
Right, and since Chris Harmer's on the call and we've got an Eros update coming up, that might even be something that Eros happens to also be working on or have some inroads in. So
Can I comment on this?
I'm sorry, Kenyatta, yes, I saw you raised your hand.
Sorry. Yeah, I feel very near and dear to that issue. I brought this conversation up with Jason Nemes not too long ago when he had a meeting with PRs for the union that live in his area. And I told him that now is the perfect time to recall that legislation that puts police officers in our schools. And he said he still felt he still felt like there was a lot of people who still felt the need to have police in our schools. And so he said he kept referencing back to a survey that he had done. And so when we got off of that call, he told me that he was going to redo the survey, but yet I have yet to see it be done. So I intentionally called him on it and have reminded him of it, and still there's been no movement on redoing the survey. And when I asked him, it was in front of other PRs and the president. So I would like to see them hold him accountable to saying that he would resurvey so that they can consider doing that legislation and not waiting to the last minute. Because if we are going to be doing that, they need to be training people. And who are they hiring for those positions? And what kind of training, what level of training are they going to have? That's not a training that can happen in 12 PDs. It's just not enough. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Do you know if he was referring to the survey that was sent to the teachers by JCTA?
I'm not really sure. He said that he surveyed, so I don't know if he surveyed on their part or what. Or if they surveyed for him.
I think that they are working together, and so it could have been his survey that JCTA sent around. But Latasha and I met with state legislators about that survey and tried to let them know that the survey had been acquired through some very questionable processes and data, you know, who the survey participants were and those types of things. So that whole thing needs to be challenged and publicly exposed for the fraud that it was, if we're going to go. And I don't think I think we should continue to bang that drum, because especially if they're going to continue to cite it as if it's some kind of credible source.
And
it was
and
not a
I told-
representative sample.
And I told Jason that they need to include more stakeholders on said survey. They need to talk to students. They need to talk to parents. They need to hear community support for that, not just what teachers think. What does everybody think about that? And all of that should be considered when you are deciding whether or not you're going to put armed guards in our schools.
Yep.
And there is most certainly a teacher element that is in support of it. I will say that. We've got some work to do on the teacher education end of things, and that's a piece.
Well,
And I think that goes in with our restorative practices that we need to make sure gets pushed across the district appropriately.
And I think what Greg was saying, this is Latasha speaking, that I think teachers are assuming that the reason why the armed guard would be in the schools is to help them control the kids. When the focus is protecting the outside of the school. That's not why they're supposed to be there.
Right. And we need to get them to distinguish, when they say police in schools, we need to get them to distinguish what it is that they're thinking the police are there to do, because half of the time you can get them to admit and acknowledge that, I mean, they won't admit it, but that it'll expose it.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between, we need to be educating the difference between safe crisis management team and a police force.
Protection from an outside threat is completely different. Yeah. All right, I know we're on a tight schedule and it's 4:17, so do we want to do any kind of wrap up to that topic, or just know that it's coming and move on to the next? The resolution, the number 2 item on the agenda. I just have a quick statement.
I'll just say be on the lookout. We're developing our next racial justice community event, which may very well center on ending the pipeline to prisons, which will cover a lot of what we discussed here.
Great.
Number 2, resolution for the people's agenda was one of the 4 EARN items, and in the process, when Pastor Scholl was on one of our calls, we asked him would he be willing to sponsor a resolution, and he said yes. And really, that's an invitation, that's an open door for us to get a meeting with him. And like I was saying, this police in schools piece could definitely roll up and be part of the language that's included in the resolution, but this is really just a blank slate at this point. There are some samples of resolutions that have been passed in other districts that support, they're in movement for Black Lives is some of the language, or support of Black Lives Matter in some districts. And so we can look at what's already been done and bring these samples to the district and form a committee is what I think we ought to do. We ought to form a committee that crafts the language and brings it back to the decision-making panel to continue that seat at the table. This is intended to be an ongoing seat at the table document as well. So it can be longer term and inclusive, like including all of the things that we recognize need to be addressed.
Okay, is there actually a people's agenda education document yet? I thought that was still bouncing around inside of the Alliance.
There was, I bet it'd be really great if Tyra or Tia were on this call and could comment on that, the latest of it. Last time, it's been over a year since I clicked into that document. So
Okay.
I know it definitely needs to be revisited and refreshed. And, but it definitely would be a good place to start. Absolutely.
Yeah, I talked with her, it's probably been a couple of weeks now, and she was not aware of any progress on it.
Right.
But, said she was going to look into it, but she's certainly got a lot on her plate.
Yep. Let's try to, make that a goal that between meetings, we kind of keep bringing these things a little bit closer to the front and closer to the front. And as a committee, we all have to do our homework so that when we come to these meetings, they're productive and we're making decisions and moving things on to the next stage instead of revamping and rehashing some of the things that maybe have already been discussed. Again, item number 3 on the agenda is we're still not able to speak at board meetings. I did send an email to James Craig Tuesday night before the work session, and I sent a copy of that in the thread. So hopefully you guys had a chance to read it. I'm not going to read it to you. He did respond to me though, and so I wanted to share that response with everybody because I did mention the inability to speak, and you know they continue to say they're working on it, but that's not good enough. If they're about to make a historic vote on the student assignment plan and our comments can't be part of that historical decision, either before they vote or the night that they vote. You know, this has just been part of the relationship that we've had with our board. And I think we've been more than patient in our you know, stance for just kind of letting them say, we're working on it, when we know that here we are meeting technologically. It exists. The technology exists. And in fact, our families are supposed to be also able to get on. So if we're making sure they're able to get on and do their lessons and meet with their teachers, why wouldn't we assume that they could also have a need and an ability to speak at board meetings? So I think we need to start making more noise that they need to be opening up that avenue, especially ahead of any kind of vote. And maybe Arrows could support that as well. You know, no vote until the public comment. And the public forums are great, but they're not the same thing. So, Kenyatta, is that a fresh hand raise or is that from before?
I was just wanting to make a comment, just thinking about that. I mean, before they would get frustrated on board meetings if people would go over their time. Now they can just mute them. That's one of the beautiful things about internet and working online now is you can say when that is over and you can give the time and then shut it off.
Right. And Chris Kolb in his reply email said that, you know, we can still email and that's better anyway. Well, no, we could always still email. And so taking away an option that we already, you know, in addition to one we already had is not better. But anyway, so in my email to James, I said, I had 4 things highlighted at the end. One was dual resides for everyone, not just dual resides for Shawnee and West End families, but everyone in the district could have a second resides, and that second resides would be a West End school. So we've discussed that before. And he said yes. He didn't even like try to debate that one. And again, that's not final. That's just he supports it. And then the second one, I referred to it as ban the box because I think people can quickly take their minds to what I mean by that. And that is the application barrier. In order to just apply for a transfer, you have to meet certain minimum requirements. And so we want to remove that application barrier for our families that don't have a close to home option as their default. And he said he will follow up on that. One of our committee members had mentioned Marzano's guaranteed curriculum or something like that. And I don't know if any of our teachers and administrators are familiar with that, but I mentioned that might be something to look into for community hubs. And he said, I'll follow up on this. And then on the speaking, he said, public participation is hard. It's COVID time and we haven't been able to figure out the technology. Everyone has tried across all government entities. They can't figure out how to let people comment. Why can't we pre-record a 3-minute video and they play it? Like there's no a reason why you couldn't do that as part of your process. But anyway, so we need to stay on them. Anybody else want to comment on that?
You asked about whether Arrows might get involved in this. I actually think video presentations for public input should go on long after COVID.
Yes.
Because one of the problems we have is that, you know, 7 o'clock at night is not a good time to get parents over to Van Hoos. So I think there's a legitimate case for that. Arrows has not talked about it, okay, I'll tell you that, but I think there's an argument there that they ought to be doing that long term, not just you know, just during COVID.
What was his response?
I'll put that on our agenda next.
I'm sorry, what was his response, Gay, to the video?
That was, so you're, after he said across government, all government entities, I said, can we submit 3-minute videos, triage them as you would an in-person speaker? And he said, I will follow up with Marty, Diane, Chris. And what, is that Chris Brady? Which Chris? Do we know? Chris Kolb?
It has to be.
Chris Kolb? Are they like, is Chris co-chair?
Chris is.
Till next meeting. They redo the organization on the January 5th meeting.
So would Arrow sign on to some kind of letter from all of our groups that say no vote until public input can be part of the general meeting?
I would send that around. I'd send that around to the reps, yes. And see what.
Yeah, we also need to be careful how we phrase that, because they could argue we already allow public input. You just have to email it to us and.
Yeah. Okay, I know it's 4:26. I want to get student assignment plan feedback from our teachers before they have to jump off the call, or at least talk about it before they have to jump off the call. So if it's all right, I'm going to skip Eros and come back to that. Is that right, Chris?
Sure.
And Greg, teachers, real quick before you disappear, down below I listed some resources. If you haven't already done so, I encourage folks to listen to the last two podcasts of Save Our Schools with Dear JCPS that is now on SoundCloud. It's basically just very little of us talking. We've just edited down the last two, the public forum that the district held, where Shamika was one of the guests, and several community leaders brought their questions, and all of the presentation that Dr. Polio and the administrators made is that radio program from that particular YouTube. So you can watch the longer version YouTube, or you can just catch an hour-long most important clips on SoundCloud. And then same thing, the next link is the work session that they held this past Tuesday, and kind of gives you a sense of where the board members are. I think for the most part, everyone on this call probably is pretty familiar with what all has been proposed at this point. And I personally, I'll start and just say, I don't think I see anything that is worth like pulling the brakes on and saying no to this plan. But other than the fact that it just doesn't go far enough, and it risks, if we only do these things and we don't do some other things, it risks returning to segregated schools. And that is a concern that has been probably the loudest response that I've been hearing from the community since the radio show, the WFPL radio show came on. If you haven't heard that yet, that's another resource that I recommend. A lot of the pushback is obviously about resegregating our schools, valid concerns. So I think that's where we need to apply that pressure and ask what's going to be put on the other side to prevent these downsides from happening. So real quick, let's hear from any of you that need to jump off.
I'm just glad to hear that concern be raised and definitely stay on the radar, because that was definitely something that was glaring to me when we were talking about where schools will be placed and where students should have access to their education as reference to their home, especially since our city is already so ornately defined by the red line that's stretched all across the county.
I'm gonna have to go back and check out the videos. I pulled away from a little bit, but you know, certainly wraparound services, if we've got to be pushing in the right directions if it's going to be successful, and that's pretty much what you said, but I'll dig through it a little more this week.
And I think we should talk about whether or not we want to host our own forum to answer the concerns and continue to elevate the concerns and find the right words for what those concerns are that we can build consensus around. And Liv agrees with you, Ms. Dean Bacon. I don't know if you saw that comment there.
Yeah, I'd certainly recommend everybody taking a look at the last video, though. I think there was some meat put on the bone around how they intend to support the targets and goals for diversity in response to the issue about resegregation. Because I presented comments, and Gay, I don't know if you did this too, but on the focus groups that they offered for student assignment this last week, and pushed pretty hard on that. And what came back from that last board work session is that it isn't going to fall on the principals to meet those diversity goals by themselves, but that the choice group is going to be working really hard to try and identify and contact families who might be interested in undersubscribed magnets where it would improve the diversity of those schools. That's one whole area they're going to be pushing. So they have some things they've found from other districts that they're going to be trying to do, but yeah, they're still a long way away from mandating diversity over choice. And he did say that the second round of student assignment, God knows when that'll come, will address elementary schools where some of the, Michelle would know best about this, but where some of the really lousiest diversity indexes in the whole district are really segregated, certainly based on free and reduced lunch, if not also race. So I think they will deflect any push right now to try and get changes in elementary schools in, even though they opened up in the last two work sessions and said, you know, give us your ideas. They really are going to stay away from that. They also talked about redoing boundaries, and it's hard to imagine they would do that without having a major redo of student assignment.
And if I could chime in, hey, everybody. I apologize, you haven't seen me in a long time, but been a little busy with these things called hubs. So a couple of things. One, I think that segregation issue is still the largest on the table. I think the dual resides in both ways will help with that. I also think that we haven't gotten any strong answers about how Shawnee will meet any of the diversity goals, and what Chris was talking about as far as the coordination of that diversity goal being met. I think they called it the individualized collaborative assistance. I don't know the name of it, but I know it sounded like a whole lot of bull to me. I'll be honest with you, as a former principal. That meant that we were out of compliance and somebody called and said, you need to get in compliance. There wasn't a lot of support around how to make that happen. And so it was just another thing kind of forced upon the schools where we know there's not a lot to it. I would also say that something that I don't know if you guys have talked about, but is also a part of that magnet program that was brought up is right now, when you fill out that magnet application, if you fill it out on the first day that applications are open, your likelihood of being, your application being picked up and getting into the school is greater than if you fill it out on the last day. And most Black families, most poor families in our community fill it out later. And so they really have no choice. So when I talked to Dr. Polio about this, he was in agreement that that was something that could make a big difference, just waiting until the last day for applications all together to let the lottery begin. And so I think that's something that we need to continue to advocate for, that no applications be pulled until the end anyway. There's no use of giving somebody a head start just because they made their decision first. It doesn't, mean it was the best decision.
And, you know, we've had diversity targets before and it didn't keep us true to them. It can also lead to top-down pressures and bullying and gaming the system and, you know, all that other stuff. So we want authentic.
And so if I can ask one question, I think Kenyatta actually brought this up, but I was trying to put my mind around a real scenario. So if I live at 35th and Greenwood and I want to go to Manual as my first choice, and I put down Manual as my choice and I don't get it. And so my next assigned school or reside school is Eastern. And Eastern says they're full. Then I go back to Shawnee. Is that how everybody kind of understands what this looks like? So if that's the case, I mean, that's the best example for how this is resegregating schools, period. I think we have to do a clear job of providing those type of examples, because that's dual resides just throws people all together. I don't think the public knows what that means, but if you able to put it in those terms, you know, because everybody understands I didn't get into my first choice. I didn't get into the magnet. Well, then now you go there, and if they don't take you, that's your only other option. And also about how quickly Shawnee will fill up and what happens when Shawnee is full. That is huge. What happens when Shawnee is full? Because what has happened and in the past 22 years is when a Black school is full and a white school is full, then the Black school just continues to receive students.
Yeah.
They're just going to be flooded.
Yep. Or what if Shawnee is so sought after that it becomes another Manual? Like it becomes more white because they're letting people game the system to get access to you know, how do we make sure that the seats are reserved for the kids who live in that neighborhood, I guess is what I'm really trying to ask.
Right. And Gay, you probably know this. What was the ratio in the aeronautical program?
About 10 race or person?
Race.
It was not necessarily reflective of the school, but it was, I would say, probably about, I think it was reflective of the district. I would say it's about half and half.
No. Well, and then that's huge. I mean, you know, one of the things, and I'll just say this, one of the things that we said is, you know, he takes a lot of pride in saying, you know, Shawnee is going to be the best. And we don't want Shawnee to be the best. We want every school to be quality, you know, no matter where you are. And yeah, Shawnee deserves a lot, but it shouldn't be the best. We should get rid of that. You know, every school should have an opportunity to be their best. And so we just want to keep emphasizing that.
Absolutely.
Michelle, I have a question, or Gabe.
Sure.
My understanding, your first example about somebody who wanted to go to Manual and then second choice was Eastern. I don't think they're going to keep Manual in that kind of pool, number one, because I think they're going to be one of the few schools that they keep out of the centralized lotteries.
Right.
But if you're going to a magnet with a centralized lottery, they're now drawing that lottery from the three categories of census tracts, right? The high income, middle income,
1,
and
2,
low
3,
income.
right.
And so if they go one from category 1, one from category 2, one from category 3, I mean, isn't that really, at least for those magnets, isn't that an improvement? That it guarantees slots for the category 3 census tracts? What's your take on that?
Well, that was kind of the problem with when you apply. Category 3 people apply first. And so you have to think about, you have to weigh that out with whether or not they'll even be it depends on the magnet. I guess that's what I'm saying. Is it a real option for category 3 people? Are they really trying to get in that particular magnet? So I probably need an example of one of those schools to really be able to tell. I don't, you know, off the top of my head, I can't think of one where that would be. I mean, right now, the only high schools that are outside of, and I just say Title I, you got Ballard, Eastern, Atherton, Brown, Mill, Manual, and Butler. And outside of that, I can't think of a magnet that would fit. Does that make sense, Chris? Am I answering your question?
Well, actually, until you said Butler, I wasn't so sure. I thought Butler was actually pretty high free and reduced lunch.
No, I don't think so.
No, but
No, it may be high, but it's probably the highest of those 7. But it's still, yeah, it's still below.
yeah, I think there's some hope for that centralized laterally. I think it still comes down to how many of them get rid of entrance requirements, and that is absolutely third rail for this first round of student assignment. They're not touching that. And so if you can't apply to that because you have behavior, you know, discipline record or something like that, then you're out of luck anyway.
Well, let me ask you this, and I feel so bad because I probably need to know that. I probably should know this answer. I thought that when the lottery is drawn, you get in. There's no entrance requirements at that point. They say you have a spot at this school, but let me tell you what will be required of you once you come and once you accept.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like a backdoor way of intimidating you and making you say, I don't think I can do that.
Right.
But it doesn't, you don't have to do anything beforehand to get in the door. Does anybody know if that's for certain?
That is,
And
that's the interest-based lottery. And my understanding is that's how the academies are going to operate, but like still not the manuals of the world, right? The lottery only is if it's an interest-based magnet.
I need to do some, I need to do some further look in that. So I know for sure.
Both my children just applied to be in magnet programs, but they didn't have anything extra that they had to do. They
Are
just
they
had to-
elementary?
No, one's going to middle school and one's going to high school.
And have you, so they just applied. So you haven't received the letter saying, here's what it's going to require?
No. I did get follow-up emails already for both of them though, from the schools.
And see, that's the only thing. You just hate that. I mean, it's, you know, my husband always tells me that Louisville is the last minute capital of the world, like for, you know, concerts or whatever. And that's why a lot of places don't book here. I don't know how you quantify that. I mean, I just don't know, but he swears it's true. And I just think that that is so unfair that because I have the witness to know the date and I've had good recommendations, I picked. And now my application is almost a guarantee as opposed to waiting until the last minute.
Yeah, I think that their schools, both of their schools did a great job in reminding the students and making sure that the students knew how to make their selections and where they needed to go. And then also communicating with parents and families. For what, in my experience so far, every year, my kids had to make that transition. We have been adequately informed, I believe.
Good.
So between now and when the board votes on this proposal, I think we'll just meet every week and leave this conversation, have a section of the meeting where we kind of just continue to hash through things that we think are missing, things that we need to clarify, and continue to refine that list until we're at a point where we're ready to submit it to the board. So, you don't have to think of everything today. Come back next week if you skip a week or whatever, because it's the holidays. It's not, I don't think you're going to miss anything if you miss a meeting. The idea is to just make sure we have a place for people to come and make sure their concerns have been recorded somewhere and that they didn't get left out of the mix, right? So if anyone else wants to help me kind of keep these meetings going over the holidays, I looked at the calendar and it's not going to really conflict with any major holiday because it's on a Monday. So if I open up the forum and nobody's there, I won't be offended. I'll just shut it back down. But if you do run into people that like, where can I go to make sure people understand this particular concept? This would be a great place for us to do that until we figure out how we can push that information up to our board members who are actually making these decisions. And maybe this becomes where they come to record their video because there is no other format. And then we turn it into a little hodgepodge YouTube video that we make available. I mean, we're going to be needing to be creative in ways to find and amplify people's voices. So I think hosting our own forum is another way where we just put a Zoom meeting out there and let people come and talk. And then we create a little capsule of those expressions that convey in a streamlined fashion what it is that we want to get across. So be thinking about that in ways that, we might be able to make that happen. Let me just look at the agenda before we head to the next item, make sure I covered everything. We did submit a long list of questions to the forum when they did the community forum that Shamika was on. And so I will follow up with Shamika and see if the district ever gave her a written response to the questions that they were not able to answer on the program, because there's a lot of information there that I think would guide the next steps for us as well. I think is that everything on student assignment? We want to skip on over to Eros.
I mean, that's pretty much what we were talking about, I think, is expanding student assignment.
So you're good with the proposed changes thus far, other than, I mean, I don't see any reason to slow it down, I guess, is what I'm thinking. These are things that are critical and must be done. So we wouldn't throw a wrench into everything just so we could say, we need this one little one. It's not really little, but we need more. I don't know. What do you think? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does to me, Gay. I don't see how we can say no to these things. Dual reside deals with a long-standing injustice. It's got to be taken care of. And the changes to magnets are all good. They're just necessary but not sufficient, I guess is the simplest way to put it. So we keep pressing on the other stuff so that there is a second student assignment. I don't think they're going to add anything controversial and substantial, but that stuff's got to be put out there.
Yep. All right.
And by the way, I consider and put in my comments both to the board and then the focus group that SRO is a student assignment issue, because if a student doesn't want to be in a school that has armed police, that's a huge issue, because they don't have many options in high schools. And I think that's another way to kind of bring that issue up too.
Okay, let me write that down. And the reason I asked to put Eros on the agenda, I was hoping Greg and Ira, Greg and Ike were also both going to be here, because sorry, I said I was going to write that down. I completely forgot what we were talking about. Remind me what I said I was going to write down.
You mean the last thing I was talking about?
Yes, please.
The
Sorry.
SRO is a student assignment. I mean, SRO is a student assignment issue.
Thank you. Okay. I was talking with Greg and, well, at the last Alliance board meeting, I said the Kentucky Alliance is a member of AROS. I don't know that we're getting monthly reports back from AROS when when our representatives attend. And so AROS having been, in fact, I should have worn my student assignment first sweatshirt. AROS has been student assignment first longer than anyone, you know, as far as making sure we prioritize student assignment issues. And so since Dear JCPS is no longer a member of AROS, I was, from a Kentucky Alliance board member perspective, wanting to still know what AROS was working on and what the plan was regarding this proposal, and what are you guys doing that we can complement or work in tandem effectively. And so I also asked that Greg report back, and Ike also said he would be willing to serve as one of the representatives for the Alliance. So really just kind of getting that pump flowing again so we can get everybody at meetings and get these updates and get on the same page as quickly as possible and ramp up.
I'm all for that. And I'll tell you what I'll do is the letter that I submitted to the board, I'll send that to you right now. But yeah, I mean, Tyra has missed the last two meetings, and we're looking at revisiting what night of the month we get together, because Monday's difficult for both JCTA people and for some folks in Surge. So I'm hoping that we get more pairs of reps so that that information flows back through the reps. But I'll send you basically what the position is now. And the actual principal statement is on our website. It's the same one that you saw back in September of 2019. It hasn't needed to change. It's a broader, inclusive list of things that need to change in student assignment. And, you know, they can do it in 2 sections, but they still need to do them.
Hey, Tia, I think Tia just joined us.
Yeah. So I'll send that to you, and then if you want to distribute it to people, you're welcome to.
Sure. And also just along those lines, though, what actions and what avenues are we using to put pressure to affect the change that is in these documents? You know, simply having them in writing is not, especially when we can't speak at board meetings.
No, it's contacting board members.
Okay, so you assign people to do those steps?
Urging people. It's difficult to get them. Everybody's stretched pretty thin right now. And
Are you having a December meeting?
Sorry?
Are you having a December meeting?
We normally don't, actually, when I look back. And I don't think the January 5th meeting is going to be a student assignment vote. Do you? Have you heard anything?
So it was worded kind of vaguely on Twitter. It positioned the work session as being a kind of a litmus test to see if the board members would be ready to put the proposal forward for a vote at the first business meeting of 2021. And so because these are COVID meetings, they're all kind of special called meetings anyway. And so when I looked at the calendar, I couldn't quite tell if the first business meeting was the January 5th meeting or the second January meeting, because they're worded a little bit different, but
yeah, it's an organizational meeting. The first one is, but that isn't the whole session typically.
Still a business meeting. So I think we need to be prepared for that possibility. And it may be that they're kind of feeling it out right now. They kind of dropped the hint and they're waiting to see what kind of murmurs are coming from the community. And I don't necessarily think that we're opposed to that, other than they need to have figured out how to let us participate in the conversation. That would be my one non-negotiable if I were to have one, is just make sure that our voices can be recorded in that momentous decision. It's part of the relationship that we have with them. We want to be part of their meeting. So that's my thought. So you're not planning on having any meetings before the January 5th board meeting in case that turns out to be when they do vote?
Not at this point, no. I will send a note out to Arrows members though about the idea of long-term starting yesterday, having some kind of video conferencing for the public to be able to speak as an improvement over what it was before COVID. And I really hadn't thought about that until, you talked about the issue a bit.
All right. Latasha, do you have anything?
No, Gay.
All right. Hey, Tia.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Anything you want to talk about? We're kind of at the end of the meeting. I started it at 4 instead of 4:30 because the HRC meeting is going on.
Yeah, I had a meeting at 4. I got one at 6, but no, because I don't even know what they got from the public forum. Like we haven't had another, or they were supposed to be doing something and coming back with us, and we haven't had another meeting. So I don't know. What is that? What is that student assignment plan work session? Yeah, I don't know.
Tia, are the focus groups that they did this week, is all that information going to flow back into the community advisory committee?
I guess, but I don't even know when because I don't know when's our next meeting. We haven't talked about it in a while. And now that the holidays is coming up, I mean, unless I missed one in the last month, which I might have, because there was a lot I was doing, but I don't recall missing one. I mean, I probably went to one about a month ago, but they still had to. Hold on. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, like all of that's supposed to come back to us. And that's why I wasn't sure of them voting on anything, because I know but like I said, I wasn't sure if I missed anything or not. Like I missed a meeting, so I might have missed a meeting. Is what I'm saying too. So I don't know. None of it makes sense to me. They say that they're going to do some things, but I still don't trust it, I guess, like the changing of the algorithm of how the money flows, how like 70% free and reduced can get 100%, like they get the same benefits as someone that is 99.8% free and reduced lunch. Like, they said they was going to fix that, but I don't know. They haven't done it. I know, I'm sure.
Oh, we can't trust them.
Yeah. I mean, they say they are. And then I know Marty was supposed to be emailing me some things and he never did. So I still don't trust none of it. But I mean, I don't know. What do you do?
So we had that list of questions that Shamika submitted before the panel. We need to find out if they ever got back to her with answers, because there were a lot of my questions were in there, and those are still going to be my questions until they're answered. So,
Yeah. So during the forum, they said they was going to get back with her.
I thought so. I don't know. I think
Well, they probably did, because that's what they say to me every time we have a meeting, and they never do. So
I think we all deserve to see their answers to all the questions that were submitted. Like, I think that that's something we could publicly ask board members to request.
Well, Renee was supposed to provide those back to the Alliance, right? That was my understanding.
I feel like that should have been but I want
Yeah.
all of them. I want urban leagues, like, I want everybody's questions. Why shouldn't I learn from collective good? I think that maybe that's another thing that we ask on our letter that circulates. Before they vote, these are the things we want. We want to be able to be heard at the meetings, and we want to know what the answers to the questions that have been submitted by the groups were. I think that's reasonable. Do you think it would be better if each of us make that request separately so that they're getting asked from more than one place? Or do we all sign on to the same request? And if so, who's drafting that and circulating it?
It don't matter to me. I'm not drafting nothing though.
Don't put you to work.
All right.
All right, well, Chris, you and I can work on that. Does that sound reasonable?
I can, and the first thing, I mean, I need to see something to get out to the Arrows reps. I'll be happy to do that. And in fact, I'm gonna send something out to encourage them before the holidays to contact their board members about this stuff.
So do you maybe want to draft what you're going to say and send it to me, and then I'll make any suggestions to include the things that I feel like we talked about, and you can tell me yes or no?
Okay, I'll take that on. I'll get that to you.
And then, Latasha, I did want to ask you, are you still interested in joining Arrows?
Yeah, it's still a possibility. I needed to re-look over the stuff that was presented to me a while back. I know that, to be honest, I think, Chris, you and I need to have a conversation outside of this about how things transpired. So,
Okay,
but yeah, I still have an interest.
do you wanna give me your phone number or pop me an email to set something up?
Yeah, I'll send you an email.
Okay, great.
And several people have asked if Dear JCPS would come back, and that was one of my conditions, is only if Louisville PTO is allowed to join. So well, you'll get a 2-for-1, Chris, if we can get this worked out.
Well, I think it would be helpful if their JCPS is interested in coming back, if you wrote me a letter on that so that I can circulate that to the reps.
When the time is right, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
All right, is that it? Look at that, we did it in an hour. Anything else? You guys got anything?
No, not from my end.
All right, well, I hope to see you again next Monday, if not sooner.
Everyone have a good evening.
Thank
Bye,
you.
y'all.
Bye-bye.